What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Power Play with CJ Tunavogasan on the Pittsburgh Penguins as part of our 2016-2017 team previews. Looking at what to expect from the Pens in 2016-2017. Obviously, this last year they did a little thing called win the Stanley Cup. Not a big deal, but kind of a big deal. As Sidney Crosby got his name etched on the cup and became a two-time Cup winner. Got his name etched on the cup for the second time. Became a two-time Cup winner, two-time Stanley Cup captain, two-time Olympic gold medalist, all that shit. Some Blackhawks fan is going to comment that Taves has 3 cups. So go ahead. I was just setting you up for that easy comment. But you look at Pittsburgh. I mean, they're essentially the team. They're intact. I mean, their one, big loss was Ben Lovejoy. And, I don't think anyone's losing sleep over losing Ben Lovejoy. Let's start with the forwards. My big question, I don't want to say it's a big question for this team, but do they keep the HBK line together? Do they keep Hagelin, Bonino, and Kessel together? The easy answer is, well, obviously. But if Malkin or Crosby gets off to a slow start, if Connor Sheary or Brian Rust, one of those guys, doesn't carry over the magic from last year, if Kunitz shows signs of his age or, what have you, do you move Kessel and or Hagelin up a line? That's something that, you can take a look at. Again, that's a situation that I'm definitely intrigued by. But again, to open camp, there's no way I don't keep that line together. Obviously, your top 6. Anytime you got Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin as your top 2 centers, you can expect to win more games than you lose. I don't think that's exactly a hot take to say that. And then, you kind of look throughout this lineup. I like Matt Cullen coming back. He'll be 40. He's not a kid anymore. But we saw last year's got some hockey left in him. Again, the aforementioned Connor Sheary and Brian Rust. I think those are question marks to keep an eye on. Can they carry over the magic they had last season? Thomas DePauli, I thought, was a smart offseason acquisition. Former Washington Capitals draft pick from the Chicago area. Penguins signed him. I think he can compete for a top 9 spot. Maybe not out of the gate, but you'll see him in the NHL next year. And I think he's a pretty good player and kind of fits the mold of what they want for their middle 6 forwards. Again, I don't know what else there is to say about this forward crew. I mean, Knackle played well in the playoffs. At times, Eric Fair, good veteran, 4th liner. It's just a very deep forward core. And again, when you got the 2 studs, the HBK line, everything else kind of falls into place. And, they're not afraid they've shown this organization, they're not afraid to plug in guys from the minor leagues in those top 6 roles, because the thing with having Crosby and Malkin in your lineup is they elevate the play of the guys around them. So, we'll see what happens with that. Daniel Sprong, you won't see anytime soon. Off-season shoulder surgery. I was kind of intrigued by what he'd offer the team this season after being up for a little bit, then going back to the queue. But after having off-season surgery, I don't think you'll see him much before December or January. So we'll see what happens. And then even then, I think he's going back to the queue for one more year. But I think he's a nice player and a kind of a draft steal for a team that doesn't have a lot of high draft picks because they trade so many of them away. He's a good player. Look at their blue line. Obviously their decor is headlined by Crystal Tang. He's the anchor. He's a straw that stirs the drink. He's not on the Canadian World Cup team. So kind of a unfortunate situation. But, and again, you lose Ben Lovejoy, and I'm sure fans in Pittsburgh are crying in their beer over the loss of such an elite player. But, again, you look at Letang, Ole Mata. Obviously, I'm a huge Ole Mata fan, so he's going to have a great year, a great impact with the Finnish military this summer, I believe. He's been training. So you got those 2. Trevor Daley's back. We'll see, 32, 33, how much hockey he's got left in him. I don't think he's dead yet. I know he was hurt in the playoffs, but he looked rejuvenated, after coming over from Chicago. Just never really fit the Hawks system after being traded there. So, there's 3 defensemen. Ian Cole's your 5 or 6, so there's 4 total. Dumoulin's, number 5, and then Schultz is 6. So, Letang and Mata are, let's say, your top 2. Then you got Trevor Daley, Dumoulin, Cole, and Schultz, with Derek Pouliot knocking on the door very hardly. he wants to show that there's a reason the Penguins drafted him as high as they did, and I believe I'm gonna pull this up right now. Don't at me. Don't quote me on this. Drafted him ahead of Philip Forsberg, and as great as Pittsburgh is, they won the Cup last year. Can you imagine Philip Forsberg on a line with Crosby or Malkin? He's very, very good in Nashville, playing with Mike Ribeiro or Ryan Johansson, whoever they plug him in. A little bit of a difference between Mike Ribeiro and Ryan Johansson, but he'd fucking even got a hell of a fit on that Penguins team. Yeah, they passed on Trouba, Philip Forsberg. It's just some of the guys that went after him. So, again, we'll keep an eye on that situation, how Pouliot does it. Obviously, he's got to overcome some off-the-ice maturity issues, but this team, I think, is pretty good on defense. They got good depth, and I think Justin Schultz, a full year with that team, with that system, will be a very solid, have some very solid impacts. I mean, I don't know what else you can really say. So, forwards are great. D's pretty good. Goaltending. Marc-Andre Fleury is back. Kind of shocked a lot of people. In fact, both him and Ben Bishop weren't traded this summer. It was like, oh. Matt Murray, obviously. He's a number 2 prospect in the organization, according to ESPN, but he's also the goalie that just won them the Stanley Cup. And if you saw my write-up on PowerPlayInsiders.com on my all-rookie team, my preseason all-rookie team, because he's still eligible as a rookie. The Fleury-Murray dynamic. I don't see. I would have tried to. I would have put a little more effort into moving Flower, even though I can understand why. Because do you really want to hand the keys to a 22-year-old, but he just won you the cup? So kind of intriguing situation. Do you split the games down the middle and go 40-40, and then figure it out in the playoffs? Do you give Murray the number 1 job and have Fleury play, 1 out of 3 games or what have you? Do you go with the hot hand? What do you do? I think it's going to be a tandem. I think they're going to platoon it. And then, the weird thing with sports is injuries happen. It's another sport, but you look at the Minnesota Vikings losing Teddy Bridgewater for the season. They got desperate for a quarterback and gave up a number 1 pick for Sam Bradford. If a goalie gets hurt and a team is desperate, thinking, we need a filler, maybe Pittsburgh could sell Fleury at above market value. That's just what I'm thinking. Just spitballing, thinking out loud. But is there a chance they end the season with both Murray and Fleury? Yeah. There's a very good chance. And then with the expansion draft and all that shit, it's going to be kind of a tough dynamic. But I think Jimmy Rutherford will figure that out. And then waiting in the wings is Tristan Jarry. I've been a fan of his since his Edmonton Oil Kings days. He's not a bad goalie prospect to have. Keep an eye on Tristan Jarry this season. It's a little spoiler. So we talked about the team. We know how they're constructed. Mike Sullivan's a hell of a coach. Jimmy Rutherford's done a great job assembling this team. They're the reigning champs. They're intact. My preseason pick for them. They're one of the best 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. It's them, the Rangers, and the 2 teams in Florida. Those are the top 4 in the East. And the Washington Capitals 5. Forgot about the Capitals for a second. I think a lot of people did. So, but the Rangers are the 5th. It's those 4 and then New York. I don't know what I was thinking. It's a college football Saturday. My brain's not working right. I'm thinking about spreads and overs and unders. So those are your 4 teams that can very easily win the Eastern Conference. It's tough to win the Cup. It's tougher to repeat. No team's done it in almost 20 years. The Penguins didn't do it when they won it in 2009. They didn't come back and win it in 2010. They should have beaten Montreal, but that's a different story. They ran into a hot goalie by the name of Yaroslav Halak. But they're going to be a contender. I mean, I don't know where slot. I think they'll win the Metropolitan Division. I think they're going to be, or they could just do what the LA Kings do, which is half-ass the regular season and then come alive in the playoffs. But I think they'll be back at it. They have as good a chance as anyone to win the Eastern Conference, and it wouldn't shock me at all if they became the first team in 20 years or 18 years to repeat. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's all I got in this episode of the Power Play with CJ. Stay tuned for more episodes throughout the off season and beyond. Later, guys.